Hi guys, so today we are going to learn about non-chord tones. You're going to need the non-chord tones summary sheet that is on Blackboard. You don't need to print that, but there is a cello sonata score that you do need to print because we're going to be marking that up pretty heavily. So go ahead and grab those two things. And we're going to start with just some simple definitions. First off, what is a non-chord tone? When we're talking about non-chord tones, the first step you have to do is figure out who the chord is. Once you figure out the members of the chord, if there are other notes going on that are not members of the chord, those are non-chord tones. They are dissonances that we need to explain and label in some way. We're going to use that cello sonata as our model to find a bunch of non-chord tones and learn how to label them and recognize them and learn what they do and how they sound to us and what they do to our listening experience. Go ahead and grab the cello sonata score and we are going to start with that. All right, I hope you guys are ready. This piece is absolutely gorgeous. We are going to just give it a listen. Follow along, mark in your score any spots that sound cool or seem interesting to you, and we will go ahead and talk afterward. All right, first off, how gorgeous is that piece? Secondly, let's go ahead and dive in with this idea of, first off, finding the harmonies. You can do most of this analysis with the stuff that we've learned already. Let's go ahead and highlight or just zoom in on the first two systems to start. We're going to go through, I've given you some Roman numerals. Let's go through and put in the rest of them. The first step to locating non-chord tones is figuring out who the chord is, so you can determine who doesn't fit. Let's go ahead then and put in some Roman numerals. I gave you one to start in the first system. Let's fill in the rest. E flat majors are key. We start on tonic. Then we go to that 2-4-2 that's already in there and labeled for you. And let's take a look at measure 3. The entire measure is the same harmony. I'll play it for you. So you can tell by that second at the top that it is an inverted harmony. And in fact, when you have that second, at the top of the second is your root. So B flat is the root, which gives us a 5 chord. It has a 7th. That was what caused that dissonance right there, right? So it has a 7th. It's in first inversion, 5-6-5. And as we expect then, it goes to 1. Fun fact, this harmonic paradigm, 1-2-4-2-5-6-5-1, is a paradigm that you'll learn in Skills 2. I'm going to change keys. Sorry if that annoys you, but So first, 4 measures of Bach's Prelude in C. 1, 2, 4, 2, 5, 6, 5, 1. Same exact harmonic paradigm, and you see that occasionally out in the wild. So fun non sequitur extra fact of the day. Okay, now that we know what harmonies we have, we can go ahead and determine which pitches don't belong in that harmony. Now, looking at the first measure, everybody actually fits, right? If it helps you to write out letter names as an extra kind of reminder of who you're looking for, then by all means go for it. So E flat, G, and B flat are who we're looking for in that one chord. And in fact, those are the only notes that we're dealing with in that first system. So cool, we have no non-chord tones, fine. Second measure, we've got a 2, 4, 2. So our 2 chord then in E flat major is going to give us F and A flat and C. And then there's a 7th with the E flat. Now, I'm going to flip my highlighter on because we do have one note in here who is not a member of the chord. And that is right on the downbeat we have this G. Let's keep on going. Third measure. Again, if you want to write out letter names. And just like the first measure, we don't have any pitches in this measure that do not belong in the harmony. Let's jump to the fourth measure. Tonic triad, so we're looking for E flats and G's and B flats. And now we all of a sudden see quite a few right hand and left hand notes that are not a member of that triad. Again, on the downbeat, we have this A flat that doesn't belong. We also have a C here, and this one really jumps out because it's chromatic. We have a B natural here, and in the left hand, if you look at our left hand thus far, it's just been block chords, right? We do have this A flat in the left hand that does not fit within the harmony. Now that we know where the non-chord tones are, how do we go about labeling them? There are specific names for all of these non-chord tones. We've talked about a few of them already in terms of counterpoint. Let's take a look at this handy-dandy chart. You do not need to memorize this. Keep it, use it for reference, but you do not need to commit this to memory. A lot of it will become embedded in your brain whether you want it to or not, but you do not need to memorize this anytime soon. Let's take a look at how this chart is organized. This first box here, these are non-chord tones that are approached and resolved by step only. So we're only moving by step with these non-chord tones. And one of these, the very first one, you already know. The passing tone we learned in second species counterpoint. So we already know that one. It is a note that is between two consonants and you pass through it by step. Neighbor tones. Now, I mentioned neighbor tones in the context of the 5-6, the harmony. I refer to it sometimes as a neighbor harmony. Now we're going to explicitly define this. A neighbor tone is an either lower or upper non-chord tone that is there by step. So an upper neighbor versus a lower neighbor. You get to and get out of a neighbor tone by step. And then the last one there, double neighbor. This one is kind of fun. So say we have this harmony here. Here's our chord tone. We go down to a non-chord tone, up to a non-chord tone, and then come back. Think of it as a hug, right? Here's your chord tone. We go down below it by step. We go up above it by step, and then we come back to it. So we sort of hug it from either side by step. That is a double neighbor. Okay, now let's talk about what happens when we leap. That is that second box. You have two different non-chord tones that involve a combination of leaping and stepping. The appoggiatura, I think a lot of you have probably encountered this term in your practice or in your private lessons. Appoggiaturas are when you leap, so I'm going to give us, here's arbitrarily our chord. Here's another chord tone. We leap out and then step down to resolve. So leap out, step to resolve. The important thing also about appoggiaturas are they are accented. So the appoggiatura is going to be on the strong beat and we resolve on the weak beat. Appoggiaturas are these really beautiful non-chord tones that build a lot of tension, especially because they are on the strong beat. So here's our harmony. We leap to that non-chord tone. Think about leaps as generating energy. So we generate all of this energy by leaping and by being dissonant, and then we step down, or alternatively step up. So if you leap downwards, you step up, always in opposite directions, right? Again, energy balance. If you leap up, you've got to step down to balance it out. If you leap down, you're going to step up to resolve. Now, what's the flip side of that? An escape tone is where you step in and leap out. So literally think of it as escaping out. It involves a leap out from that non-chord tone. So if you look kind of how it jumps out in either direction to quote unquote escape the dissonance. So we step into an escape tone and leap out. Appoggiaturas and escape tones are kind of two sides of a similar coin. And last but not least, non-chord tones using repeated notes. Again, you know one of these. We spent a lot of time with suspensions in fourth species counterpoint, right? That is something you know. Our note is tied over the bar line or repeated over the bar line and then steps down. Now, unlike in fourth species counterpoint, where you were not allowed to do this, there is a such thing as an upward resolving suspension. So you can have the same idea, note is repeated, but it resolves upward. Couldn't do that in fourth species, but you can do it now. And last but not least, an anticipation. Again, think of it as kind of a mirror image to a suspension. A suspension, someone hangs around too long, right? A note hangs out a little too long over the bar line and then steps to a chord tone. An anticipation is the exact opposite. Note gets there too early, gets too excited, anticipates the next harmony, and moves there too early, and then the harmony follows. So anticipations, suspensions, again, mirror images of sorts. And the very last thing is this idea of a pedal point. And again, this might be something that you've heard in ensembles or in your secondary lessons. A pedal is, think of it as pedaling at the piano. So when you hit the pedal on the piano, the sustain pedal, something just stays forever and ever. A pedal point is when one note just stays regardless of the harmonies going on above or around it. So whether or not it is a chord tone, pedal points usually start as a chord tone and then harmony keeps happening, but the pedal stays there. And then eventually the harmony comes back to the pedal point being a chord tone again. So there's harmonic dissonance in the middle there that the pedal point enacts. Again, you do not have to have this memorized, but keep it for reference and keep in mind as you start experiencing and learning about these non-chord tones, really consider how each one affects you because they do have different effects on us as listeners. Some are perceived as more dissonant than others. Some are perceived as more jarring or causing more tension than others. Keep that in mind. Now, with that, Let's go back to these green highlighted notes and figure out some labels from them. I'm not going to toggle back and forth to the non-chord tones handout because it'll probably make you sick with me switching screens that often. Have it out or in another window for yourself. I'm going to stay on the score. Let's go ahead and throw some labels on these. Our very first non-chord tone is on the downbeat of measure 2. Couple of things to think about then as you're going about labeling. One categorical way is what non-chord tones happen on strong beats. That's one way to think of it. Another way, and this is the way I approach it, is how did we get to this non-chord tone and how do we exit it? So if I'm looking at that then, we get to it actually by the same note. And we leave by step. Looking at that handout, what category of non-chord tones come from a repeated note that exits by step? Again, this is actually one that you know. This is a suspension. Now let's jump forward to the downbeat of measure 4, and just by eyeballing it, I'm actually going to see that we have the same exact situation. It's approached by the same note, exited by step. We have another suspension here. Now let's take a look at what happens at the end of that first beat. This C, we approach this one actually by leap. So we leap to it and we step out of it. Leap to it, step out of it. Look at your handout. That second box is our leap and step combos. And that tells you leap in, step out, nice appoggiatura. And last but not least, that A flat in the tenor line. That is just a nice, easy passing tone. That's our familiar one, or one of our familiar ones. And this last one, the B natural that I highlighted, we've actually got to look to the next system to see what happens with it. So we approach it by step, and we actually leave it by step as well in the same direction. This is another passing tone. You could, so I label my passing tones and chromatic passing tones differently. So I would label that as CPT, chromatic passing tone. But that's not an absolute requirement. As long as you recognize it's a passing tone, then we're good to go. All right, that first system, the cello is just giving us a bass line. So there's not a lot going on in terms of non-chord tones with the cello. And by not a lot, I mean nothing. Let's now take a look at the second system. And we are going to take the piano and the cello parts and find non-chord tones for all of them. What I'd like you to do is take a minute and come up with Roman numerals for the missing harmonies on this system, and then double back and check with me, and then we'll move on. Okay, hopefully we have the same harmonic analysis here. We start out with it's a special type of 4-chord, and we'll get to that in a week or so. And then we have tonic, 5-6-5, tonic on beat 2 of that second to last measure of the system, and then I gave you the 6 and the 5. Now what I'd like you to do is go through and just find the non-chord tones in both the cello and the piano part, and then double back and we'll see if we have the same info. Let's go ahead and start with the cello part. It's a little easier to navigate, so let's start there. First off, we've got this 4 chord, so we're looking for members of the 4 chord in E flat, which gives us A flat, C, and E flat. Who is not a member in that cello line, it's just the B natural. So look at how we approach it. We step down to it and we step back up out of it. We come to it and return from it from the same pitch. This is a nice lower neighbor. Now, similarly, in the very next measure, we do the same thing, right? Approach by step, leave by step in the same direction, or from the same pitch, I should say. Lower neighbor once more. And look what we have going on at the end of that system. So, oh, it should be D flat, sorry. A whole bunch of lower neighbors with those A naturals. And then this C, again, you've got to look ahead towards the next system, which I clearly did not do because I played you the wrong note. But regardless, we do reach that C and leave it going in the same direction. We have a nice passing tone here. Cello part, pretty easy. Now let's look at the right hand of the piano. The left hand is entirely diatonic. We don't have to even worry about it, with one exception that I didn't highlight yet. Let's look at the right hand. Now, what you immediately see here, so what you see is the downbeat has C and E flat, and then we get this pair of non-chord tones before we return to the C and the E flat. So here is our chord tone harmonies, right? And then we leave those pitches to go down by steps, and then we go up above them by steps before we return. This is that non-chord tone hug I was talking about. Here's our double neighbor figure. Abbreviate as you like. And then at the end of that measure, we go, so chord tones passing through in the same direction, we have a pair of passing tones. Looking ahead to the next measure, we do the same exact thing. So we have another double neighbor figure. And then the downbeat of the next measure. Let's take a look at what we have going on. So we've got dominant harmony. We've moved from tonic to dominant harmony. And so here's our bass note. So on the downbeat, we have this one non-chord tone in the G. These are both our chord tones, and then the B flat here. Let's look then at how we receive and how we leave that G. We actually come to the G from the same note, right? You've got to do there's a little kind of voicing exchange of sorts, but we had that G in the previous measure. And then we step out of it. What non-chord tone did we come to from the same note and then step out of? That is a suspension. Now on beat 2, we have what looks like it would be kind of the same idea, same figure. And to some degree it is. So that F is suspended, right? And steps down to E flat. But what would we do with that A flat? The A flat we did not get to with a repeated pitch. We actually just leapt our way to it and then stepped down by step. So non-chord tones that we leap to and step out of, that is an appoggiatura. And last but not least, what happens on the downbeat of that very last harmony? This one is actually a little bit interesting and could go both ways. So here we are. We've got this 6th chord that I gave you the label for. So So this is a downbeat then. Where did we get that E flat and that G from? We could actually say, well, we got them from the previous beat. Explicitly the E flat and the G actually from the octave below. So if that's what we're going to go for and say, we got them from the previous beat, that means that we repeated them and they stepped down. So that would be suspensions. And that seems to make sense. We had a chain of suspensions on the beats, right? I wonder, as you listen to this, if it doesn't sound like an appoggiatura to you, though, because of the change in voicing. This to that might sound more to you like, oh, we leaped because of the octave displacement of that G. We leaped up to that and then we stepped down. Or is it leaped or leapt? Whoa. So, whichever. So it might sound to you like an appoggiatura, and I think there's a good case to be made for either of those accounts, especially because I'm asking you to really consider how these non-chord tones feel to you. That might feel more like an appoggiatura than anything else. There is one more on this system, and I haven't highlighted it yet, but I'm going to now. First measure of the system, the left hand, I have it labeled as just a 4. If it was a 4 chord, though, in root position, who would be in the bass if we're in E flat? We should have A flat in the bass, right? Instead, we have E flat. If you remember from triad inversion land, then, we haven't done a lot with second inversion triads yet. We will get there. But this would be a second inversion 4 chord then, right? Second inversion triads are very special, and we only see them in particular situations. They are treated very carefully. And one way that we treat 6/4 chords is as pedals. Now, if you look at where this E flat came from, it came from here, and it stuck around when we went back to tonic in the next measure. So we went, in essence, from here to here to here. So it went from 1 to 4, but the bass stuck around, and then back to 1. Now, the E flat is not a non-chord tone, right? It's still a member of the 4 chord. It's still a member of that triad. But this particular 4 chord, because it is in that second inversion, is something that we would call, or we will call in a week or so, a pedal 6/4. This is bonus information. If that's too much info for you right now, burrow it in the back of your mind and we'll come back to it in a week. But that E flat is a pedal tone, even though it is not a non-chord tone. We're going to skip the third system. It's a little spicy. There's some stuff in there that you'll learn in theory too. I would like you to take the fourth system, and I want you to do all of what we just did on your own, and then come back and check your work. So I want Roman numerals. I want you to locate the non-chord tones, and then I want you to label them, cello and piano parts. Do that, and then come back and check your work with me. Okay, hopefully this is legible. I did cross out the first half of the penultimate measure. I should have told you that before I let you go, but sorry. That is a harmony that we'll learn. It is a flavor of a 5, but it's a special flavor of a 5. And we will learn that in a week or so. Sorry that you suffered through that, but all the rest of it, you should be good to go. So let's take a look. One of the things that is interesting is we get kind of these 2 passing tones, which by definition should, I guess, maybe not make them passing tones, but we get this sort of chromatic movement. So both the A flat is a passing tone. It's not part of the tonic triad, but the A natural isn't either. And then we land back on the B flat. So we take a passing tone and then we stick a chromatic passing tone right after it and land ourselves on a chord tone. Not textbook passing tone, but it's still passing in essence anyways. And then the B natural in that measure, also chromatic passing. We get our double neighbor figures again, and this is analogous to the ones we had in the second system, right? So they're quite similar in their construction and execution. So double neighbors in the piano and in the cello. And then passing tones, lower neighbors. The cello, be careful here, the cello does have this appoggiatura. So we leap to the D from a chord tone, and then we step out of it. So we get a little appoggiatura in the cello, but the right hand of the piano just has passing tones all the way down. And then last but not least is this tone in the cello. If we're thinking about this as a big fat 5 chord, we leaped up to that G from the E flat and then stepped down out of it to chord tones, and then we are good to go for the rest of the excerpt. Alright, that was your crash course in non-chord tones. You're going to do a little work on them for your homework. So let's just take a look at this really quickly. This is one of your hard copy assignments up on Blackboard. It's due on Monday. You're going to do a little Roman numeral analysis. So this is a combo of non-chord tones and inversions of the 5/7. So you're going to do a little Roman numeral analysis for me. Friendly neighborhood note, your right hand is in bass clef. If you try and read that right hand in treble clef and make sense out of this, you're going to have a really bad time. So your right hand is in bass clef. Please keep that in mind. Listen to a recording of the piece. That'll also remind you. I just need some Roman numerals there. Part B, we did this in class. We did the Roman numeral analysis in class on Wednesday. Now I want you to go through and find, circle, and label the non-chord tones like we just did. And then last but not least, you're going to do a little bit of part writing for me. Inversions of 1, inversions of the 5/7. Refer to your class notes for reminders on the process that we took in class. Write out your baseline first. Inner voices are moving by step or staying the same, so no leaping in your inner voices, all that fun stuff. All right, wonderful, guys. Go listen to that entire sonata if you have a chance. Just like stick it, grab it on Spotify and listen while you're, while you're cleaning your room or whatever. It's gorgeous. Really, give it a listen. It's some wonderful music. I will see you on Wednesday. Good luck with the homework and have a great weekend.